Hi guys, my name is Jo and I am the CEO and founder of NaviStar Legal. And today I am here with Peter Carayiannis. Welcome, Peter.
Hello.
Peter is the founder and president of Conduit Law, and he is here to talk to us again today about the laws of business and the business of law. As someone that has set up in his own business and that supports other businesses, Peter, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey to set up Conduit Law?
Well, thanks very much, Jo, and thanks for inviting me to be part of this. It's a pleasure to be here, and
You're welcome.
I'm going to enjoy the conversation. Listen, my path to Conduit Law is probably very similar, a very comparable roadmap to so many others who have started alternative legal model operations. I don't even know what the right lingo or jargon is anymore for us, but went to law school in the US and in Canada, licensed in both sides of the border. We're based out of Toronto, just for those of your viewers or listeners who don't know Conduit Law. And had a very conventional introduction to the business of law. I was fortunate to article at a national Canadian law firm and to return there as an associate and to work there for a number of years. Good firm, good people. But after a period of time, there were elements of the business of law, not the business at that firm. Like I said, good firm and good people, and still many of them are friends of mine to this day. But there were elements of the business that that didn't sit well with me, that I thought could be better, that I thought could be different. In those early days, I attributed a lot of blame on the billable hour. I think that was a little bit naive at the time to just think it was the billable hour. I now, after many, many years, think it's partially the billable hour, but there's a lot more that goes to it. But I felt that I could do something a little bit different. So I left the firm and I set out, ultimately what I was doing was prototyping what would later become Conduit Law, but I had some clients at the time that were interested in having an in-house lawyer, in-house counsel, a GC, call it what you will, but they didn't have enough work, enough budget, or enough space sometimes for a full-time in-house lawyer. Their company had reached a certain level of maturity, a certain level of commercial sophistication where they could see the benefits of having an in-house lawyer, but they just didn't need someone 5 days a week, 52 weeks of the year. And I went to those clients and I said, well, I have an idea. What if I went 1 day a week to client X, 1 day a week to client Y, 1 day a week to client Z? And ultimately I was giving them that virtual general counsel solution, and I created a portfolio of clients. And I started that in the early 2000s, 2004 to be precise, and continued that way for a number of years until I realized that there may be something more to this than just being a solo lawyer going from client to client, and that there may be something along the lines of a platform that I could create that would in fact allow numerous clients to receive that benefit and numerous lawyers to work in that flexible way that I had enjoyed for so many years. And that's the road to Conduit Law. And with that, I started Conduit Law in January of 2012.
So like a lot of business owners that I know, you saw a problem, you saw a demand, and you kind of put the two together actually through your own career and offering people those services. Actually very similar to my way into starting NaviStar, funnily enough, because it was exactly the same. Oh, some people need some support. Oh, I'll support them. And then how does that support look? So what did you, Conduit Law, why is it different?
Well, there's a few things that we do differently. First of all, in the billable hour, we do almost no billable hour work at all. Full transparency. Yeah, probably 90% of our revenue is some variation of whatever you want to call an alternative fee arrangement might be. And we use a lot of different types of fee structures for the client. But that does mean probably 10% of our revenue still is the old-fashioned billable hour. We do it on an exception basis and at a request, and usually it's just a short-term solution for a client in a particular situation. But everything else is some variation of an alternative fee arrangement that gives our clients two principal things. One is transparency on how the fees are arrived at, and certainty. And that is possibly one of the great differences between the way we do it and the way conventional law firms do it. We really put the client first. We are trying to solve a problem for the client We recognize that clients are entirely indifferent to how much work we put into the solution. What they want is a solution. They want a solution on their terms that works for them, that works for their commercial environment, that works for their team. And they don't care whether it's a 1-hour solution or a 15-hour solution. What they care is that it's done on time and on budget. And that's what we do. We give them that certainty and that transparency. All of our lawyers are independent contractors. So what we do is we create, in effect, a large network of commercial lawyers here in Canada. And then those lawyers are available to work with clients on site. Historically, now we're in these COVID times, and so there is no on site, but we've always offered an opportunity for our lawyers to work on site as needed with clients, and then virtually. And most of our clients take the virtual solution. Most of the clients are happy to interact much in the way that you and I are interacting right now, electronically, digitally. You know, I like to say, we were virtual before virtual was cool. In fact, that's really part of the DNA of Conduit Law.
Ahead of the curve. Yeah, you're definitely doing things differently because you set things up, right? I kind of get the impression with you that you went, if I were going to just design this from a blank slate, how would I do it? And you went back to really basics and made a decision.
Well, that's exactly what we did. We just really came at it and said, well, if you didn't know what a law firm looked like, if you had no concept of the pyramid structure of partnership, the competition and the contest for moving up the ranks, if you just were saying, I want to deliver legal solutions to commercial clients, what would be the best way to organize that? And, you know, in fairness to big law firms, they've got, they're quite invested in legacy systems, like so many other businesses, but they're very deeply invested in legacy systems, legacy hardware, legacy software, legacy real estate and infrastructure. And we were not encumbered by that. So I said, well, I'm not going to replicate that. What I'm going to try to do is find, to my mind, the sharpest, fastest, cheapest, easiest, most flexible and adaptable digital solutions for our time, and put those to the service of helping clients. It always struck me, one of the things that always struck me as really peculiar. Law is fundamentally a knowledge-based business. It's a solutions business, and clients pay for a number of different things. They pay for our knowledge of the law, our knowledge of commercial matters. They pay for our judgment and our experience, which is why there's something inherently different from a lawyer who's got 1 year experience versus a lawyer with 20 years experience. There's a certain amount of maturing that happens over those years. Not to knock first-year lawyers, but clients do pay for that level of judgment. And then they also pay for a certain amount of our technical knowledge of how to get things done, which forms to be filed at which time, with which government agency. That's very technical knowledge. So there's knowledge of the law, there's technical knowledge, and then there's judgment. But none of that needs to be tied in time and space to a physical place. And it always struck me as very peculiar that we have all these really, really intelligent, highly educated, capable young lawyers coming out of law school. And I would have been one of them, many, many years ago. But we train them up to be able to learn and adapt very quickly, to absorb huge amounts of information, to then synthesize that information to create a solution for a client. And instead of liberating those young minds to go out and solve problems, the law firm solution is to chain them to a desk and put a timer on them, right, and say, start dividing your day by 6-minute increments. And so in putting Conduit Law together, my view was, why not liberate ourselves from that physical space? I mean, we've had offices in the past, and we've used those offices as a gathering place, as a hub to come in and go out, but never ever chaining a lawyer to the one office.
Yeah, wow. And you know what I love about having conversations with you? There's something about the mindset, and talk about that in a minute, the mindset shift that happens when you're designing services from the ground up. And I've seen people that we mutually know that have have done that have gone, right, I want to create something different because I know there's a better way of doing this. And just even the way you articulate it and the way you think about it, this isn't just, you're not just regurgitating this. You're not just reading a book and going, well, you know what, we should, these are the theories. You've lived it, you've done it, and you've got the scars. Like, what are the hard-won lessons that you've learned through your time setting up Conduit Law?
Well, thank you for saying so, because this has been at times have been the school of hard knocks. Well, you know, a few things that I've learned. First of all, when you have a message that's contrary to the mainstream in your industry, don't be surprised if people don't like it. Don't be surprised. Yeah. But for people like us, Joe, we think, well, this makes so much sense. You know, we have this moment, we have this epiphany, there's this light bulb moment, and we think, and I just want to share this. I have this great idea, or I think it's a great idea, and now I've tested it, I've prototyped it, and actually I can show you how this has worked for me. I'm not saying it's universal and for everybody, but then you turn around and you want to share this with the rest of the world. And, you know, the response from the mainstream legal industry was, shall we call it, underwhelming. So my first thing that I would share is when you have a new idea, don't go to the old people to talk about it. Go stay with your tribe, stay with the people who are going to listen to it, because the old establishment will ultimately just find ways to poke holes into what you're doing, and that poking holes will inevitably deflate you and inevitably take away your energy and enthusiasm. So really go to those places where there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm. I think the other thing that I learned as well, and you and I talked about this not too long ago, was, and this may be personal to me, and I'll just share it with that, and it may have just been maybe something idiosyncratic to how my brain works. But when I first started Conduit Law, I was still practicing law. I still had a full sort of schedule or calendar of responsibilities with existing clients. And I found that I was going through this cognitive dissonance almost on a daily basis. And I didn't really understand it. It would literally cause me headaches and manifest it physically. And what I learned over the course of a few months was that when I was in entrepreneur mode, I was always seeking opportunity, looking at risk, trying to manage risk, and trying to build Conduit Law within the context of that. And then when I would turn into lawyer mode, I was almost the opposite. I would seek to find risk and then just hide from it, or point out all the boogeymen to my clients. And what I found that if I tried to do the same, if I tried to do both entrepreneurial activities and legal activities at the same time or on the same day, I literally couldn't process the two activities at the same time. And so what I started to do was I shifted the days. So on Mondays and Wednesdays, I would just be in entrepreneur mode. I would be looking for ways to build and grow and enhance Conduit Law, and taking on risk where necessary. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would sit quietly at my desk and draft contracts. You know, one of the examples that I give is that you know, if I was in entrepreneur mode, and then a client would give me a contract to review, I would just look at it and say, oh, it's great. It's no problem. Don't worry. Carry on. You'll be fine. Go for it, which isn't really the right legal advice. And if I was going the other way, and if I was in legal mode and I was trying to do something for Conduit, I would just take up a contract and mark it up completely such that I'd ultimately be paralyzed and wouldn't be able to move forward at all. And so I learned after a little while to balance that within myself. And I learned that there was a way that I could be both an entrepreneur and a lawyer, that I could seek opportunity and manage risk, and also, you know, be perhaps a slightly more conventional, traditional lawyer, and mark up a contract the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, I do not think that that is just you. I think it is the nature of the beast, because I had exactly the same experience. And when you said it, I felt like, oh, somebody else understands, because it was. And it takes a while to even realize that that's what's going on, because you think, why today am I saying, nah, don't worry about it, just keep going. and then and then other days I'm, you know, really in it. No, you you can possibly do that today. So I can really relate to that. No, 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 God knows, way too risky, way too risky.
Yeah.
And
You start to realize it's almost emotional. It's almost an emotional response.
yeah. And there's a like you say, how, well, okay, let me ask you, how did you, or how do you still shift your mindset from one to the other? Or are you finding that that was just a matter of experience and just, right, okay, shift the day? I know you're big into personal development and growth. Like, how have you grown through that piece?
Well, when I first started shifting it, I literally would just do it on alternate days. I wasn't able,
Right.
you know, it was the early days of my entrepreneurial experience. And so it was hard to even, you know, chew gum and walk at the same time. I'm a little bit better now, but typically what I'll do is I'll actually physically change my space. And that could simply be
Right.
something as simple as moving locations to change the setting in my mind, or take a physical break, maybe go for a walk, maybe call a friend, do something, have a cup of coffee, but create a break from what I was doing to what I will do, and that make that change and make it a physical change, which will ultimately manifest itself mentally, psychologically, and emotionally. I'm better at doing it in a faster way now because I recognize what it was. In the early days, I literally, you know, I probably shouldn't admit to this, but I'm going to nonetheless. I mean, in the earliest days, when a client would call on an entrepreneur day, if I can call it that, I would, unless it was a real critical emergency, I would really do everything I could possibly do to push that client to the next day.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I was hiding from them, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to do the best job possible.
Right.
And I knew
Yeah.
that I was not in a mental space to do a good lawyerly job because I was off, you know, I was off slaying dragons. And, you know, you can't slay dragons and also pay attention to like tying your shoelaces, right? And
Exactly. Two mentally different things. I want to talk about software because
yes,
last time we spoke, you gave me some. I mean, even saying, "Oh, we have software for this, software that," because you're a big tech person, you're a big automation person. Because you started with a big blank slate, you made conscious decisions about, instead of legacy software, you were going to use new and different things. I mean, whether you choose to share the names of them, that's fine. But I was just saying, what do you do? What do you do? What's your legal tech platforms look like? What sorts of things have you brought into your, you know, Uber call?
yeah. So what I would say on that is, I don't mind sharing some of the names. I don't want to get too, you know, sort of pitchy or admin here. But the I think the difference is, and people who know me really well know that I'm not that techie, and I'm really not that early of an adopter, but maybe by legal standards or by lawyer standards, I am. But what I did was I looked at the technology through a few different prisms. The first one was cost and flexibility. And it had to be something that would work for a small upstart entrepreneurial business. I simply refused to make a major investment in a piece of software that either was very expensive or very inflexible. I just wouldn't do it. I just simply would stick with Word and Outlook and Excel, and we'd use some duct tape and chewing gum and make it work. What
Yeah.
I learned, though, is by having that mindset of A, being cost conscious, and B, looking for flexibility, we then sort of discovered the world of SaaS. And you know, when we started in 2012, the world here particularly was quite jittery when it came to cloud-based solutions. And I remember at the time telling everybody who cared to listen that in a few years' time, we will look back on those debates and think how quaint they were, because really there was a lot of Chicken Little discussions about the cloud. And
Right.
right, but you know, I didn't, you know, the sky wasn't going to fall, and the cloud would be figured out, and it would be secure, and it would allow us to do a great many things. And in any event, I would always tell people, whatever the cloud may or may not represent to you, surely to God, it's safer than that computer you have under your desk that's just waiting for you to pour a cup of coffee onto it. And that usually ended that debate.
Or get left on a tube, as they do here in the UK. They get left on a train.
Exactly. They get left on the train, they get left in taxis, you know, your cat sits on it. Like, obviously we can do a little bit better than all of those solutions from yesteryear. But I looked for SaaS-based solutions that gave me the most amount of flexibility. Remember, I also have this idea that law, given the fact that it's a knowledge-based business, that we can divorce ourselves from physical spaces. So I was always looking for software solutions that allowed me to plug in and engage with clients and engage with the firm from anywhere in the world, whether that was my home office or a shared workspace or the client space. So we use software management platforms like Clio. A lot of people would know Clio. We've been using Clio almost from day one, and they provide a very compelling solution that we have been able to build our firm on. But everything we do, including financial management, payment processing, all of that is done entirely online with SaaS-based solutions. They interface with our banks. They engage with our bookkeeper. We're able to keep all the records up to date and able to do it at any one time, anywhere in the world. And I managed to test that as well, and so far so good.
Right. How have things changed for you during lockdown? I did get wind of a little project that you've been on during lockdown. So you didn't just go, oh, it's lockdown, I'll tell you what, I'm going to sit and watch a box set.
Well,
he was out there.
There's been a fair amount of Netflix. I'm not going to lie to you.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear that.
My wife and I made it through The Crown from beginning to whatever the end of it. I think
amazing.
Season 3. So that was pretty fun.
Pretty good.
Listen, the lockdown, like so many others, I'm sure I'm spending a lot of time just trying to understand what we're living through. It'll probably come into focus in the future. We'll be able to look back and we'll have a little bit of context and distance to look at it. It's been, both an amazing time and a horrifying time at the same time. We've been very fortunate by and large in terms of our family. Everybody's, happy and healthy here. And we're blessed to have a home that we can be in, and it's we have enough space that we can retreat to our respective corners and reconvene at mealtime. I can't believe how many meals we've had to prepare and clean up and prepare and clean up and prepare and clean up.
Yeah, right.
And prepare and clean up.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing for lockdown, from a work point of view, obviously it's had an impact on our clients, and it's had an impact on some of the work that we've done for our clients. It had absolutely no impact whatsoever on Conduit Law and our delivery of legal services. So Conduit Law, from the day before lockdown to the day after lockdown, was an invisible, seamless transition. I say this honestly, hand on my heart, not as some kind of a humble brag and not as some kind of a told you so, but I was really pleased to see that the investment in time and energy we had to make Conduit Law as virtual as possible entirely paid off. In the early days of lockdown, so many of our contemporaries and law firms, I'm sure in the UK as well as here in Canada, they spent a huge amount of time and energy telling the world what they were doing in response to lockdown in order to make themselves virtual. And I had clients call me up laughing at these messages and saying, well, you don't have to tell anybody anything because you guys are already there. I'm like, well, yeah, we are already there. So that was a good transition for us. And it was great that our lawyers were able to continue to work for the clients. Obviously in person ended, but it ended for everybody. That now we just started doing our work remotely. I did, together with a partner, launch a little initiative called Sustain the Line. And you check it out at sustaintheline.com. And we launched it just a few weeks after lockdown started. And it really was in response to, obviously, the need of frontline caregivers who were starting to see the immediate impact of COVID. But it was also, when we called it Sustain the Line, we meant not just frontline workers, but also kitchen line workers. It was clear that the restaurant industry was going to be so heavily affected. And what Sustain the Line does is it connects generous contributors who are willing to pay a restaurant to make a meal for a frontline caregiver. And we didn't really know what would happen when we started. By the end of it, though, and we're still operating now, but we're in 19 cities in the US and Canada, and we've served over 10,000 meals to frontline caregivers, and
Wow.
hopefully helped out some restaurants.
That's given me chills, and it's given me chills, and it's made me think this is what high achievers do in lockdown. Like, you don't, like, I'm going to start a new business with a charitable angle, and I'm going to run it alongside my current business whilst watching Netflix.
Right, exactly. And pretending, my joke throughout all of this when people ask about the kids at home is I tell them I'm pretending to homeschool them and they're pretending to learn. So I don't know.
You are 99% of the other population.
My kids are going to be running back to school as fast as those schools are going to open.
Yeah. Or they're like, I quite like it. And definitely my nephew's loving homeschooling. He absolutely loves it because there is none. So
Yeah, exactly.
Summer holidays.
If by homeschooling you mean Xbox, then yeah.
Right. You know, there's so much you can learn through computers nowadays. It's all experience-based, isn't it?
That's right.
I've got one more question before I ask you how we get in contact with you. Tell us about, what have been one of your biggest life lessons so far?
Oh, wow.
Not necessarily work.
So it's funny that that's a great question, and I didn't expect that one. So thanks for stumping me.
Yeah, I was thinking, wow,
you know,
quiet.
Yeah, and I'm not usually that quiet. I think my biggest life lesson throughout all of this, and it's a little bit ironic, given that I'm very well known in the marketplace for my, almost ideological and unreasonable opposition to the billable hour, that I think the most important thing I've learned through this is the importance of time. I've never looked at the at those time of the essence clauses the same as I have in the last few years. There's the only thing that's not renewable is time. And we never know how much we have. We've lived through experiences personally with family where time was, cut short and denied.
Yeah.
I've seen work opportunities dry up because of time. People went too slowly, the market shifted, and good opportunities were lost. I've seen great opportunities be ahead of their time and die on the vine because of it. And I've seen, and I don't mean to be judgmental, although this is going to maybe come out a little bit that way. I've seen really good people with great opportunities, with great ideas, and good education, healthy, energetic, and a good idea. I've seen them waste their time, stuck in an office, stuck in a job that they don't really like, really just whinging and bitching about it. Pardon the language. I don't know if this is a PG interview or not, but
never.
Right. But complaining every Thursday and Friday about how much they hate their job, but then going back again on Monday and waking up 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years later and having wasted all that time. And so if there's one thing that I've learned is that, time truly is of the essence, that the only time we know we have is today. And there's never a perfect time to start a business. The only time you have to launch an idea is either today or tomorrow. That's it. And today may be a good day. It may not be a good day, but in the grand arc of things, your business, your company, your organization, your idea will have good days and bad days. And, none of us could have, well, none of us, really smart scientific brains could have predicted COVID, but I think it's fair to say that the rest of us, the 99.9% of us, didn't really see it coming. I mean,
it wasn't on our radar, was it? It wasn't
it
on my
wasn't really.
2020 vision board. That's for sure.
No, it wasn't, right? And 2020, we may all want a big do-over for next year, but time is everything, and what you do with your time is ultimately what gives value to your experience and to the people around you. We all are fully entitled to spend our time whatever way we want, but just don't waste it.
Yeah, wow. Peter, I feel like that was an Oprah-esque ending. So I'm literally going to say, if I need to get in contact with you, if I want to get in contact with you, here's some more wisdom and or understand a bit more about Conduit Law. How do I get in contact with you?
Well, thank you very much, first of all. And before I forget, thank you for inviting me to be part of this series. It's very kind of you. We're not hard to find. We're available on social media, on Twitter at conduit_law, on LinkedIn. Our website's conduitlaw.com. And anybody that wants to email me can email me at pc@conduitlaw.com. Make sure to answer all calls, all emails, and would be happy to speak with anybody in your audience about any matter, including the entrepreneurial side of things.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for being a part of this series. For everybody that's watching, this has been another series of Laws of Business and the Business of Law. And Peter, I hope to see you again. We'll see you on LinkedIn if we do not see each other in person in 2020. Everybody else, thank you so much for being a part. Do subscribe below, somewhere down here, and we will see you again soon. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.